The Seahawks have enjoyed a busy offseason, changing everything from their coaching staff to a number of players on offense and defense personnel. But the key to this success for the Seahawks in 2024 still lies on number 7's shoulders. I'll be diving in here on our bonus Saturday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, the host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A special thanks to all the 12s out there tuning in and making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week, whether you're in nearby Bellevue, Washington, or you're in the middle of the country in Bellevue, Nebraska. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Didn't have a Blue Friday show due to some crazy travel circumstances, but don't worry, 12s. We're still going to get that fifth full episode for the week here on a bonus Saturday edition of Locked On Seahawks. We'll be taking a dive into the 5 most anticipated games, at least in my opinion, heading towards the schedule reveal next week, plus Jamal Adams versus Quandre Diggs. Which former Seahawk has the best chance to become a current Seahawk late in free agency as the Seahawks near the 2024 season? It's going to be a jam-packed episode, so let's get to it. Now for your lead story here on our Saturday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Up to this point, it has been a historic offseason for the Seahawks. After 14 years with Pete Carroll as the head coach, Seattle moved on from the legend and replaced him with Mike Macdonald. There is a brand new coaching staff, only Carl Scott returning as an assistant from Carroll's staff a year ago. New defensive coordinator, new offensive coordinator, some major changes in the offensive line and free agency of the draft. On defense, a number of major personnel changes. But at the end of the day, after they had an 8-player draft class, brought in some undrafted free agents, for the Seahawks to really reach their potential in 2024, the key is still held by the player playing the most important position on any football team, and that is Geno Smith. And obviously, this has been a point of contention for some fans for the last years because Geno Smith was the comeback player of the year 2 seasons ago in 2022, and then last year stepped back a little bit, still had decent production. It's not as if Geno Smith had a year where he was a complete slouch, but he did not have the same numbers that he had the season before. And that led a lot of fans to speculate whether or not he was going to be the quarterback in 2024. And yet here we are. He has been given the public support from Mike Macdonald and John Schneider that he is going to indeed be the starter, even with Sam Howell coming over in a trade in March with the Washington Commanders. And this is where I stand on this. I don't think that Geno Smith is going to be mistaken as a top 5 quarterback. I don't think, at least consistently. There have been flashes where he has played at that level, but that is not where he is going to fall. At the same time, though, the stats don't lie going into his 3rd season as starter for the Seahawks. You look at where he stands compared to the rest of the league the last 2 seasons. Geno Smith ranks in the top 10 among quarterbacks in basically every meaningful category. Look at the passing yards, 7,960, ranks 6th overall over the last 2 full seasons. 50 touchdown passes, that ranks 6th among quarterbacks. His passer rating of 96.8 is 8th. It's still in the top 10. He ranks 4th in completion rate. He's tied with Kirk Cousins for 1st in game-winning drives, so he has been incredibly clutch at the end of games for the Seahawks. He's 10th in rushing yards among quarterbacks with at least 600 pass attempts the last 2 years. And he's 2nd behind only Josh Allen in big-time throws. Of course, that's a PFF statistic, but 66 of them. I think when you look at the entire sample size here, whether some fans want to hear this or not, where the Seahawks go this season, yeah, the addition of Byron Murphy in the 1st round is really exciting, and being able to go out and re-sign Leonard Williams and some of the other moves the Seahawks have made, the coaching staff, all the changes they've made there, all these moves are exciting. It's a new era, and there is a sense of optimism with some of these new players and the new coaching staff coming in that maybe Seattle can finally get over the hump, as they haven't won a playoff game in several years. For them to be able to do that, though, it is going to boil down to what the Seahawks get out of Geno Smith this season. And you look at those numbers and you would expect, it's a reasonable expectation that Geno Smith is going to be a top 10 quarterback in most metrics because that's what he has been the last 2 seasons. And Ryan Grubb coming in as the offensive coordinator, I truly believe that is a chance to be a game changer for Geno Smith in a number of different ways. The first one being the guy has a long track record being a former offensive line coach. That's where he cut his teeth. He has a long track record of protecting his quarterbacks at a high level. And yes, this was college. He hasn't had a chance to do it in the NFL. So there is some unknown to this. But Ryan Grubb has been a master at protecting the quarterback. Michael Penix at Washington, dating back to his time at Eastern Michigan, his quarterbacks were well protected. They had a couple of NFL draft picks at Eastern Michigan on that offensive line. So I think Ryan Grubb is going to be a big part of this. But as exciting as that addition is, as exciting as for this new coaching staff to come in, a new line coach and Scott Huff, the onus is going to fall on Geno Smith to be able to maximize that opportunity. And I do think that the Seahawks, they have made the moves. And this was something I talked about back in February. If the Seahawks want to be able to jump right back into contention early in Mike Macdonald's tenure as the head coach, for them to do it, they're going to need to make shrewd offseason moves that are going to improve a defense that has been dreadful the last couple of years. And they're going to have to put the missing pieces around Geno Smith so that he can maximize his talent. To me, those are the two most important things. If the Seahawks are going to be able to get over that 9-8 hump they've been in the last 2 years, 1 year making the playoffs, last year not making the postseason, if they're going to get back to competing for an NFC West title, to winning playoff games in January, trying to get back to Super Bowl, I think they could do it with Geno Smith, but they had to find a way to get that defense to at least to where it was marginal. It has not been the last couple of years, and they needed to find those missing pieces. They've got the receivers. They've got a really talented tight end in Noah Fant. They're hoping they can unlock his full potential to get 2 really good young tackles. Hopefully they can keep him healthy. I think when you look at what the Seahawks have done to this point, Ryan Grubb to me is the biggest addition that helps Geno Smith. As I've mentioned, that O-line background, being able to get the football out quickly, also likes the deep ball, which Geno Smith's been as effective as any quarterback in the NFL the last 2 years at throwing the deep ball. I think Ryan Grubb's the biggest addition, but I would not downplay the addition of Christian Haynes in the draft. That is a outstanding addition that Geno Smith should be fired up about, not just because Christian Haynes grew up rooting for him when he was the quarterback at West Virginia way back in the day, but the fact that this guy gave up 3 pressures in a full college football season 2 years ago. Last year, he gave up 12 and 1 sack. He has been one of the best pass protectors in college football for several years running. Now, sometimes that doesn't translate to the NFL. I think in the case of Christian Haynes, though, it will. And I still believe in Oluwatimi at the center position. This is a guy that had outstanding production at Virginia and Michigan. He was the Outland Award winner 2 years ago. Last season, he got to start 1 game, and I thought he played pretty well in that game. Those 2 young pieces there. And then in the other guard spot, whether it's Laken Tomlinson, whether it's Sato Lamea, I can never say his last name right, whether one of those guys steps up, maybe Anthony Bradford ends up being the starting left guard, whatever the case may be, there are question marks with that offensive line in the interior, and yet there is legitimate reason for optimism, for being excited, because you've got some young players there with a lot of talent. You've got a plug-and-play player in Christian Haynes. I think Oluwatimi is going to be ready for that starting job in year 2. And heck, if Anthony Bradford can beat out Laken Tomlinson at left guard, if he's able to do that and take a big step from last year, you are looking at a foundation of 3 guys that can start together for the next 3 years on rookie contracts minimum. And you have Charles Cross and Abe Lucas with at least 2 more years together. So there's a lot of reasons to be really excited. That, to me, was the best thing the Seahawks have done to help Geno Smith from a personnel standpoint. At the end of the day, he's going to have to do his job to get the football out of his hands, and he's got to find a way to overcome that slow start he had last year. You can't do that this year. If the Seahawks can give him a more consistent run game to balance with him and he doesn't have to shoulder the load quite as much, I think Geno Smith could have an even better year than what he had in 2022. And if that happens with the talent, he's got the skill positions around him, and I think the defense is going to be better. I don't know if it's going to be a top 15 group, but it's going to be better than what we've seen the last 2 years with Mike Macdonald to help. You put those pieces together, this team can go out and win 10-plus games and maybe be a dangerous team in January. But I don't think without Geno Smith taking that step forward, getting closer to 2022, surpassing that production and getting better offensive line and run game support, I just don't see it happening. So to me, he holds the key. The coaching staff holds the key, making sure they can maximize Geno Smith's talents, because that, to me, is what gets this team over the hump more than anything else. I like the moves they've made. Now we got to see how they put everything together. When I come back for the next segment, we get the schedule reveal day coming up next Wednesday. Which games am I most looking forward to see where they land on the schedule? I'm going to look at my 5 most anticipated matchups for the Seahawks in 2024. That'll be coming up next year on our Saturday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by Yahoo Finance. Let's get straight to the point. You want to grow your portfolio to deal with the rising costs of inflation, to pay off your debt or your mortgage, pretty much anything standing in the way of you and financial freedom. With Yahoo Finance, you can get access to the news, data, and tools you need in order to reach that financial freedom. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or looking for extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. They are the #1 financial destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, and much more. With a community of over 80 million users each month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com, the #1 financial destination. That's yahoofinance.com, yahoofinance.com. This episode's also brought your way by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. It's what brings the winning trophy home, and it also keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has got everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak for performance, whether that's superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. If you're into speed, power, or style, whatever your game is, automobile-wise, eBay Motors has got you covered with over 122 million parts. For your #1 ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time of your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. You're listening to the Saturday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. A special thanks to all the 12s out there. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. We are nearing the unofficial NFL holiday that is the schedule reveal date on Wednesday, May 15th. We will finally know when the Seahawks are going to play their opponents. Up to this point, we already knew who Seattle was going to play at the end of the 2023 regular season. They have matchups against the NFC North division and the AFC East division out of their NFC West matchups. And then they've got games against the New York Giants, the Atlanta Falcons, and the Denver Broncos will be coming to Seattle as well, that extra game. So we know who Seattle is going to be playing. What we don't know is when they are going to be playing those games. We don't know how many primetime matchups they are going to have. So this is just my take heading into Wednesday. These are the 5 games that, to me, are the most anticipated ones for me that I want to know where they land on the schedule. Maybe it's because of the opponent. Maybe it is because of where the game may be played. There's a number of factors here. But for me, my #1 game on here, this would be number 5 going down in pecking order, the number 5 most anticipated game for the Seattle Seahawks this upcoming season. It's a road contest against the Chicago Bears. Now, I don't think the Chicago Bears are going to be a Super Bowl contender. They did win 7 games last year. They had the #1 pick. They got Caleb Williams. Maybe he elevates them to a wild card team. I could see them being very competitive. The reason this game falls on this list is where it could be played. The Bears are going to play a home game at London, and this is the only opportunity the Seahawks maybe have to play an international game next season. So that is one of the reasons this is on this list. I would love to see Seattle going up against Caleb Williams. There are some other good players on that Bears team that looks to be an ascending team going into 2024. But the fact this game could be across the pond in London, that makes it one that I am looking forward to. At number 4 on my list, most anticipated games, I'm going to be staying in that NFC North division. The Green Bay Packers coming to Seattle. I have this circled as one of my can't wait to watch games, regardless of when it is played, because I think the Green Bay Packers have a chance to potentially be the best team in the NFC this year. If Jordan Love takes the next step, I mean, I don't think fans realize how well he played late in his first year as a starter, replacing Aaron Rodgers. 32 touchdown passes, only 11 interceptions. Green Bay's got a couple of really good young receivers that are growing up with this quarterback. And I think that they made some interesting moves in the draft to upgrade their defense and their offensive line as well. So I can see the Green Bay Packers. They brought in one of the better running backs in the league, and Josh Jacobs as well, to complement Jordan Love. I just think Green Bay is going to be a very tough team to play regardless. Now, I think playing at home helps Seattle here instead of having to go to the frozen tundra at Lambeau Field. But still, this is a game that I'm really excited about. At number 3, this may surprise people. It's not higher on the list, but this game's played every year. San Francisco coming to Lumen Field. It almost always is prime time when these two rivals from the NFC West get together. Of course, I'm going to have this near the top of the list. I want to see if it's a prime time game in Seattle. Again, the Seahawks have not been able to elevate their game the last couple times. Maybe with Mike McDonald as the head coach, some new changes on the roster, that changes a little bit. San Francisco is pretty much bringing back most of their team from a year ago, though. Even Brandon Ayuk is still on the roster. So they're going to have Brock Purdy. They're going to have all of his weapons around. They've still got a very solid offensive line. Plenty of talented players like Fred Warner on defense. San Francisco's not going anywhere. If you want to get the NFC West title, you're going to have to run it through San Francisco. So that game is number 3 on my list for obvious reasons. Just the rivalry, the talent San Francisco has. That is the big bully that has been leading this division for the last several years. Seattle is going to have to go through them if they want to finally get over the hump and win another NFC West title, really compete for a Super Bowl. My last 2 games on the list for most anticipated games, at least looking forward to the schedule reveal coming up on Wednesday. At number 2, I have a road matchup against the New York Jets. This is a team that really fascinates me because last year Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles tendon 4 snaps into his first game with the Jets. And then we saw what happened when Zach Wilson was playing quarterback. They rotated in a few other guys later in the year. The season ended up being an absolute disappointment. I loved what the Jets did in the draft. I think they had a solid free agency, and this is a team that have been a playoff last year. If the offensive line is better, which I expect it is going to be with the personnel changes that the Jets have made, if that offensive line's better and Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, I know he's 40. I don't think he's in the prime of his career anymore, but I still think Aaron Rodgers can be a bad man under center. That is a game playing in the Meadowlands that could be a really tricky one for the Seahawks. And it's a game I'm going to be looking forward to because the Jets are going to have a very good defense. I think that offense is going to catch up with the defense. That could be a very underrated, I'm not going to say a Super Bowl preview, but that could be a game that people are going to be watching very closely with 2 teams that maybe finished better than expected in the AFC and NFC respectively, with really talented football teams and quality quarterback play as well. And my most anticipated, I'm staying in the AFC East. Not going to lie, the Miami Dolphins coming to Seattle, that is the game that I am most excited to see. I think this is a game that has a very good chance to be a primetime matchup for the Seattle Seahawks this year. I don't know how many they're going to get in the schedule, but Miami, I think, is a bona fide Super Bowl contender. If Tua Tagovailoa can take that next step forward, he's got one of the best, if not the best, receiving cores in the league. Miami's got some electric runners. They've got some fun players on defense, particularly their pass rushers. It's a team that has not been able to get past the first round of the playoffs, even though they've been pretty good the last 2 years. This could be the year that they are able to figure things out and make that deep playoff run. If Seattle wants to show that they belong in the discussion as a contender in the NFC, beating the Miami Dolphins at home would be a huge feather in the cap for them because of the amount of talent that the Miami Dolphins have, particularly in the offensive side of the football. That is a great test for Seattle secondary. It's a great test for the pass rush, getting after Tua Tagovailoa. That is a game that I'm very excited to watch this year for the Seattle Seahawks, and I think it is going to be. I think there's a very good chance it's going to be one of their primetime games. So I can't wait to see on Wednesday when that game falls on the upcoming schedule. Up next, the Seahawks have made most of their roster moves, but there are still rumors out there, particularly about a certain number 33 coming back to Seattle. Does it make sense for Jamal Adams or Quandre Diggs to return? on an incentive-laden contract before the start of the 2024 season. I'll be diving in a little bit of comparative analysis of where the two may fit into Seattle's plans moving forward, coming up next here on our Saturday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode of Locked On Seahawks is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's the best thing that you wish you had an extra hour in your day to do? For me, I wish I had a little more time to write and produce heavy metal music. The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. BetterHelp Online Therapy will assess your needs and can match you with your own licensed professional therapist in less than 48 hours. Therapy worked wonders for me this year and the last couple of years struggling with family-related health issues. But don't just take my word for it. Having someone in your corner to guide you when you're struggling to navigate obstacles can be invaluable. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime with no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's 10% off your first month of online therapy at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. You're listening to a Saturday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. A special thanks to all the 12s. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. The Seahawks have made a number of moves changing up their personnel on defense. Most notably, they cut a lot of money off the books of the safety position back in March by releasing Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs, two former Pro Bowl talents for the Seahawks, two of the highest paid safeties in the NFL. Seattle decided to let them go, had to eat some big dead cap hits to do so. And then they brought in Rayshawn Jenkins and Kayvon Wallace at much cheaper contracts and free agency. Julian Love is still around. And here we are now in mid-May, and Diggs and Adams have yet to sign with a new team. And of course, the longer they stay out there available, there's going to continue to be some murmurs about one or the other coming back to Seattle on a new one-year deal at a far cheaper cost than the one that they were cut on a few months ago. And this has created some debate out there. Is it worth bringing Jamal Adams with all the injuries he's had? Is it worth bringing him back to play linebacker potentially in Mike McDonald's defense? And then Quandre Diggs, 3 Pro Bowls in a row, and then last year wasn't quite as good, but still was a quality starter. Is he a guy that could still make sense to bring back? And I think you could make some arguments for and against both of these players. Let's start with the one that has been really the elephant in the room here for the last couple of years, and that's been Jamal Adams. With everything the Seattle Seahawks gave up to trade for him back in 2020, he was so good his first year with the team, second team All-Pro, broke the record for sacks by a defensive back, and then ever since then, he just has not been able to stay on the field. And when he has been out there, including last year, inconsistent results at best. He did have 7 tackles for loss last year. There were some pressures, but he still didn't get a sack, and 48 tackles before his season came to an end in December. Just couldn't get over the hump from that torn quad injury that he had repaired the prior season. So Jamal Adams has been a name that's thrown out there, and I do think that this is a intriguing possibility from the situational linebacker perspective, because as Rob Rang and I talked about earlier this week, if you're looking at the 2 weakest position groups in Seattle's defense right now, I think most people would probably agree the biggest question marks are still at linebacker and safety, the 2 positions that Adams could contribute. If he's going to play for this team, though, I think Rayshawn Jenkins, Julian Love are going to be playing the starting safety roles. I think for Jamal Adams to rebuild some of his value, being that money linebacker, that smaller linebacker that can blitz, that's really where he's going to have to rebuild his value. And I truly believe Mike McDonald could work wonders with a healthy Jamal Adams. He's more than a year removed from that torn quad tendon injury. I don't know that he's going to have the same issues that he had last year that just kept cropping up where he truly was not all the way back. I don't know where things stand with his health, but if he's healthy, I would be at minimum intrigued to see what Mike McDonald could do with Jamal Adams. Of course, there's the issue with those injuries. Are you willing to take that on? I look at Seattle's linebacker depth right now with Tyrell Dodson, Jerome Baker being the starters. They're not much bigger than what Jamal Adams is. I do think that there could be a role for him. It wouldn't be a full-time starter. If he's willing to accept that to try to rebuild his value, then I could see it being something that makes sense. I could see him and Mike Macdonald hitting off. I could see the rest of this coaching staff being able to work with Jamal Adams and make this a harmonious relationship, despite the fact that Seattle just cut him in March. But the injuries are obviously the biggest part, and he's still under 220 pounds. It's hard to envision a player of that size playing a ton of snaps at linebacker and being able to stay on the field. That has been part of the problem. So I think that the fit with the coaching staff makes sense. I can see him playing that situational linebacker role on a cheap deal that's got incentives chalked on it, maybe for sacks or playing time, whatever the Seahawks want to do, but it's going to have to be an incentive-laden contract for that to make sense. And I think when you look at the other safety that was released by Seattle this offseason, Quandre Diggs, 95 tackles, 1 interception, 4 pass breakups last year, far from his most productive season in Seattle, particularly with the ball production. This is a guy that had several years in a row with at least 3 interceptions for the Seahawks, a couple of years with 5. The guy gets his hands on the football a lot, and yet last year it didn't happen. I don't pin a lot of that on Quandre Diggs. I don't think the teams were still testing him very much when it comes to the post routes, seam routes. He still was doing his job back there. The missed tackles certainly were worrisome, but if you're asking your free safety, under 200-pound free safety, to make over 120 tackle attempts, you're going to have some missed tackles. You need to fix some things with your front 7 so that your free safety is not having to make that many stops. And I think that by itself would help in the tackling department. I think that this is one, from a personal standpoint, Rayshon Jenkins is still more of a strong safety than a free safety. Julian Love, I think, is more of a strong safety than a free safety. Maybe he's a little more of a 50-50 player. Kayvon Wallace, who knows where he fits on this defense? He's played a number of positions, hasn't necessarily been great at any of them. He's been solid in all of them. He's one of those guys that's a master of none, but he's somebody that has a number of different positions he can play at a fairly high level. You got to wonder if they're looking for that ball hawk. Does Quandre Diggs still fit into this puzzle? And I think you get deeper into the offseason. If you start getting towards mandatory mini camp, and you start getting towards training camp, and Quandre Diggs is yet to sign a contract, I still think this is something that could happen. From what I've been told, Mike Macdonald thinks very highly of him. It was just the budget needed to make some moves, and this was a guy they had to cut in order to do it. I could still see this happening. My personal opinion of these two, I think Diggs makes the most sense of the two in terms of what I would anticipate expectation-wise. And yet, when it comes to intrigue, I think Adams is the more intriguing player with Mike Macdonald, just because of that skill set that he presents and the ability to maybe play some linebacker. Ultimately, I don't know that I see either one of these moves happening at this stage. If we get closer to training camp and they're both still available, or one of them still available, I'm not going to rule it out. I think it's possible, but at the same time, I think it is a low probability that we are going to see either one of these guys in Seahawks uniform this year, mainly because of the cap situation for the Seahawks. Even if they're giving these guys veteran minimum deals with incentives chopped on top, you're still going to be cutting it close with your salary cap, and Seattle's going to have to make a few more moves to make sure they're okay with signing all their draft picks. So this is something that's a fluid situation. If Seattle makes a few more moves to open up cap space, then yes, one of these could happen. I personally think we're bringing back Diggs makes a little bit more sense, but Adams has a lot of intrigue as well. Right now, I'd say, though, it's a pretty low odds that you're going to see either one of these guys back in the Seahawks uniform. They're probably going to be moving forward with the personnel they have currently on the roster going into training camp. As always, you can follow me on X and Threads at Corbin Smith NFL. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Coming up on Monday, we're going to be diving into an OTA-themed preview. Rob Ragg will be rejoining, and we're going to be taking a look on both sides of the football. Some storylines we're going to be watching in the next few weeks. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and thanks for listening in. Go Hawks.
Nice job. Bring your stuff.